Okay, we can continue the Christmas Eve sugo recipes with, now we get into the meats. Okay, so we'll start with the simplest one. The simplest one is sausage. So we got sausage cooking now in the background, still lightly boiling. Okay, stirring it constantly. The potatoes are still in there. We'll take them out a little bit later. But the sausage is really the most the simple thing. Usually take some kind of pan and some kind of wire rack of some sort, just to keep everything off the bottom. For a little extra protection, I usually use a little spray, cooking spray, and a little sticking. You might put a little water. We'll put a little water in the bottom as well. Choice of sausage is always some kind of sweet Italian sausage. This is a local Colorado brand that I procured, but any high quality Italian sausage, if you can get you know, fresh made like an Italian market or something, that is by far the best option. But any high quality sausage will do. I usually go with links. Let them come pre-linked already. In many cases, I'll cut these in half just for convenience, so they serve up a little smaller. They fit in the containers later. But I'll cook them in the whole form rather than cutting them. Less things to you know, spin around. So these will cook in the oven at 350, probably about 20 minutes altogether. So maybe 10-12 minutes into it, take a gander in there, and we'll spin the sausage, because they'll kind of brown more on one side than the other. And that's about all there is to it. We'll just throw a little water in the bottom of the pan. That's just to collect the fat drippings. A little more. It'll help collect the fat drippings a little bit, and it'll add a little steaming action to the whole thing. So, oven is not quite ready yet, but we will pop these in just a moment. Flip them and turn them, and that is as easy as sausage is to make. I have on occasion then lightly braised them in some way by maybe in the, you know, after done cooking meatballs or something like that, just in a little oil and garlic, just to kind of and make the outsides a little crispier, or give them a little extra flavor in there, or put for some extra flavor into the sauce, but it's not a necessary step at all. Okay, good timing on the meat. Back to the meat. Our sausage has been in for about 20-25 minutes and is now finished, and it's beautiful. Then one thing to remember about all these is that these are going to cook more, even still, in the sauce. So that's a good thing, but they're all nicely done. About 25 minutes. We'll take them out, and we're going to stick them right into the sauce when we're ready to go there. But now we're going to continue with, veal. Now, some people won't like veal, but you guys always have. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we need to do with the veal. Now, I'm a big fan of veal. I only eat it probably once a year, and it's in this recipe. Now, veal, you need veal cutlets. All right, so they're very thin. Now, you won't be able to buy these at a lot of grocery stores. You'll have to get them at you know, like an Italian market or something like that. Veal is also not cheap. and goes for somewhere in the range of about $30 a pound at the current market here in 2022. So you don't want to mess with it, but it's also very delicate too, and that's part of the appeal of it, is you want it kind of melt in your mouth. It doesn't need much preparation at all. When you take it out of the pack, you pat it dry with with paper towel. Just get it ready, and then you just kind of lightly drizzle it with some with like a flour mixture of some sort, just very, very lightly. And you can add a couple extra things in there. So sometimes I throw a little, maybe some Italian seasoning right in there with it. Again, mash it up, and then even a little breadcrumb sprinkle into this, kind of floury mixture that we use. Again, we're just gonna lightly coat the pieces. You'll see how that's done in just a second. The veal itself then is then cooked in the pan for a very short time, maybe a minute or two on each side. That's it. Again, it's going to cook more in the sauce. Now, because it is delicate, two recommendations. One is don't cut it. Leave it big like this. It'll actually break into pieces sometimes as well. If you're having this or making this, and there are people who don't want to have veal, I would recommend then taking a little bit of the sauce off, putting it in a separate pot, and then leaving the veal sit in that pot, lightly cooking separately, so that you can have your main pot with the other stuff in it, and or vice versa, taking a little off and putting it in the other. Taking a little off for the person who wouldn't want veal or meats in there, and then doing it that way. The other recommendation is that you want to be careful when you put it in the pot and how long you keep it in the pot, because it does break up if you're going to be. You don't want it in during the cooking stage, really. So while it's still boiling or really, actively heated up, you want to be very cautious with it. When you do stick it in there, you want it to be very, you don't want to, agitate it too much. You don't want to break it apart by doing what you're doing with it. So in the pan, we use olive oil, and during the rest of these meat stages, you use good olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, some kind of cold press type thing. The quality olive oil is really a big thing. And garlic. Now, you might already have like a garlic press or something like that. I don't actually recommend a garlic press because you're going to be frying a lot of different stuff. So you're going to take the bits out. So I would actually use a knife and chop these up in slightly larger than than will come out of a garlic press or already minced if you buy it in the store. So make sure you have a good sharp knife. Make sure it's honed up or sharpened. You should have one of these. Couple strokes on each side. This is the safer way to do it. You're at an angle. I believe it's 14 degrees for German steel, and it's 10 degrees, I think, for Japanese. But so you try and maintain this kind of angle. Couple strokes on each side. You should be able to feel it. Make sure there's no burn. And then when you're cutting the garlic, you'll be able to make nice fine cuts with the garlic. But we're going to keep putting garlic into the pan and the olive oil, and we're going to lightly sear these on both sides, and we'll see how that's done in just a second. Okay, we're going to get to the veal in just a second, but wanted to show you kind of the size of the garlic and the slicing, but also from when you pull it off the clove, it's going to be, still have the kind of the sheath on it, the outer coatings. That one's this one's fully coat it. We'll see a lot of things to say about smashing it and all that kind of stuff. But we want to cut it and chop it. So the best thing to do is just kind of take it in your hands and just kind of lightly twist back and forth, and then it'll fall right off. And now, of course, we will cut the end off of that. You can see the end is a little gnarly, but we'll use the rest of the garlic as is. We'll cut the end off of that, set it to the side, and then just cut our garlic little slices here. Watch your fingers, use the correct method, all that kind of stuff. And we'll make a big pile of this garlic because we're going to use a lot of it. We'll actually use an entire bulb over the course of frying the veal up and the meatballs. So go through and cut a bunch of this stuff, and then we'll get back and we'll flour that veal and we'll get it cooking. Okay, here's a very, very special note. It's very important when it comes to cooking, baking, or any such thing. And Chelsea, honey, this is specifically for you. I have just chopped up a large number of garlic cloves. Okay, so when we were talking about cooking Italian, we were talking about garlic cloves as opposed to cloves. Okay, smell cinnamony, all spicy and everything. Smell very strong. Don't come off your fingers for days. That's the difference between the two. So do not put these in any of the Christmas dinner stuff. We're using exclusively these today. Okay? Cloves and cloves. I couldn't resist. Okay, now that we've dealt with the garlic situation, now we're just going to take care of the veal itself. Pretty simple procedure. I'll turn the camera down and we will go into what it looks like. Okay. Well, that should do the trick for us. All right, we got our veal. We got our flour mixture, a couple spices and a little breadcrumb and everything to show you how light this dredging is. Here's our dried piece of veal. Like boom, boom. And even that is a little too much. So you kind of pat it off so that it barely has any flour or coating on it. Set it on the pan. And that is simply how quickly or how much you do with this. It's just a little teeny flour coating. And try to keep the pieces full size. And then we're going to move on to frying them. Okay, we are ready to deal with the veal. So I'm going to turn the burner on. We're going to use some of our extra virgin olive oil in there. Also with the veal, sometimes it's nice, butter is a nice complement as well. Butter has a really low, temperature point. So we don't want that to be, too browning and too whatnot. We're just searing these quickly on each side and then taking them out. That's why we don't want too much flour on them. So we don't want to fry it like you would fried chicken or something like that. So once we're done, we'll put them on a separate plate and they will start going. Our stuff is melting. Going. We'll find a good temperature for it once it gets up to good temperature. And and we'll proceed from there. Okay, we got the butter kind of going a little bit, which should give us some indication. Throw a couple of our garlic in there. All right, that going. Kind of keep this at a medium-ish, medium-high type thing because we're going to do it fast. No sense trying to stuff too much in there at once. Let's just do a couple at a time. We find that right temperature. It's probably a little lower than I wanted it to be. But here we're just doing, like I said, just a little bit on each side. We just want to turn them brown, literally, and infuse a little of that olive oil and certainly the garlic. The garlic's gonna get bad after a while, but that's why we're keeping it in bigger pieces, so it will that it won't get burnt. So we don't want burnt garlic flavor. Also note, I had moved the spaghetti sauce, which was on here for the longest time, to another burner. Keep in mind, sometimes the setting on your dials might change a little bit, so you might get a different thing from a different setting on electric burners. They're very sensitive. So now we're getting here. You got to start to go a little bit. Just taking the pink a little out of them. You know, we want to kind of avoid any real browning of any sort. And as soon as we're done, I'll stick them right over into the thing. I think on my stove here, a 7 out of 10 or something is getting to be the right amount. Okay, really all there is to it. Boom, boom. Yeah. So that's not really cooked all the way yet, but again, a lot of it's going to be cooked in the sauce as well, right? So the garlic pieces are okay. If that's getting a little brown, take him out. And my stove is not perfectly level, so oil all likes to run to one side. And we just fry the rest of them this way, and then we're going to put them in the sauce as well. Okay, now stuff's getting real. Meatballs. Okay, in a regular batch or so, we're talking about four plus pounds of ground beef. This is 80-20, none of that lean, 93%, whatever. You want the fat content in the meatball, because when we cook it, you want the fat juices to permeate the meat, but you want it to come out of the meatball. Lean meatballs are tough meatballs. So, lean meat meatballs. So 80-20. Hell, I don't even think you can get 73%, but if you could, I would get it. So that's obviously the main ingredient. Eggs, salt and pepper, breadcrumbs, and shredded Parmesan cheese, fresh shred. It's worth it. The bunch of Italian seasoning, and the Grandpa's secret recipe ingredient, which is mint. Now, these meatballs are different than what Grandpa used to make. Grandpa didn't use breadcrumbs, cheese. He pretty much just used the spices and the eggs and the meat and everything. But I found these to be a little easier to cook, a little easier to make, and also when we roll them up, same thing. Roll them up small so we can fry them up good. These seem to be really good, but the mint was the interesting ingredient that Grandpa kind of added into the mix, and I don't know if he got that from his dad or what. I've not seen this in most recipes either. The heat from the meatball, not that it's hot, it's not spicy hot, but it's hot. And the spices themselves, create kind of a heat type thing. The mint creates kind of a cool sensation in the meatball. So this is really one of the keys to Grandpa's meatball recipe. So we really literally just throw all this stuff into the biggest pot you can get and mix it all up by hand really good. And then it helps to have, like a beer or something handy, glass of wine, whatever, bourbon, whatever it takes. 220, 221, whatever it takes. Now we mix all these up, and then we are going to fry them on the stove with lots of garlic, and then we get to the special portion of what we do with the leftover oil and garlic and all that stuff, and how that impacts the spaghetti. Spaghetti's still cooking in the background with our sausage and our veal, still stirring it, so it's still bubbling here and there. A little note, this is a nice little thing to have, is some kind of splatter screen. Kitchen gets messy, and by the time I'm done frying these meatballs, we're going to need to scrub the entire kitchen floor down because the oil is going to get everywhere in the process. But splatter screen certainly helps. I did get a bunch of sauce on my hand here, so I've gotten my cooking injury for this year, and it kind of burned me, so be careful, sauce is hot. So we're going to go about mixing the meatballs up and then and fry them. Let's get started. Okay, all the ingredients. We're going to get started mixing, and away we go. And here's our Italian seasoning. And again, it's a good idea to use your hands, mash that up a little bit. And we're using about half a bottle here. Leftover Italian seasoning is flaky. It doesn't mash as well as some of the other things. The mint will grind up really nice. And I know till we develop cameras with smell, mint is just wonderful. That grinds up really nice in our hands. I want to make sure to really incorporate that into what we got here. That uses an entire jar for 4 or so pounds. Also pays to get good spices here rather than skimping on spices. You want fresh, you want pretty good stuff, and it's well worth the thing. And now we get to mixing. And if you don't want your hands to freeze off while you're doing the mixing, don't take the meat right out of the refrigerator, otherwise you will freeze your hands off. So get it all good and incorporated. That's a lot of stuff to get together, so you know, kind of really look through it, make sure it's good and incorporated. Should be a little sticky on your hands here and there. And then we gotta get our meatball size. Like I said, I prefer a certain size, although some people like really big meatballs. I'm not sure how you cook them except baking them in the oven. We're not baking them in the oven, so kind of that size is what I like to go with, and it will take quite a bit of time to to make these meatballs. And sometimes your hands will get overly sticky from the fat in there, so every once in a while you will have to wipe your hands off. But you do want to make sure to make it so that they stick together well, but not, you don't want to compress them, that they, you don't want it to fall apart when you're frying it, but you don't want to over process it either. Kind of like a hamburger where you just kind of loosely make the patty. This you need to get a little more to incorporate it, but once you get that, it should be pretty good. And then we have to do the entire pan here. And so on, and so on, and so on. Okay, now we have the monumental task of frying about 80 meatballs on the stove. So this is all about olive oil. It's all about some garlic. And it's all about stuffing those meatballs in here one plate at a time, which will take us quite a while to fry all these up. So we're looking at a medium high heat to get things going, and then we just want a nice consistent thing. We need to cook the meatballs through. They will cook a little more in the sauce, obviously, but you can't undercook them as well. So we'll want them to have a certain consistency. And that consistency we'll kind of tell by poking them with a fork. You know, we'll want the meatball to not, you know, we'll want to be able to poke it partway through, you know, to the center, but it not be too soft or gushy in there. And we want to make sure we don't get the outsides too burned, or not burned, obviously, but too done in the process. So we want a nice even heating going on. And usually the fork is one of our best things for, well, Grandpa always turned them just with a fork. I don't think we had, you know, anything like this or anything else, but they are delicate in the beginning, and don't be concerned if they start to develop sides. They kind of develop sides even when they're just sitting in the pan. So who cares the shape of them, as long as they're well cooked. And we do have to, you know, spin them around a lot to do that. I find that, you know, used to pack them in a lot, and I used to use cast iron, but my cast iron is not nearly as big as this one, so I use this. But even still, I don't pack it in, you know, pack it totally full. It's better to give them a little room so you can move them around, swirl them around in there, maybe it, you know, I don't know. See how many we get, maybe close to 20 in here. So we'll probably do 3 or 4 frying. Now they stick right away. Yeah. They kind of do stick right away when you throw them in here. And we're, again, like I said, we don't want them to burn on one side. We just got to get that temperature. You know, the beginning's always a little bit more difficult than the. Once we get the right temperature going, everything will be cool. A lot of grease splattering, a lot of stuff for that, but just we'll want to be cognizant of that. Keep them a little mobile. They kind of stick right away, but they're going to get brown right away on the outside. That does not mean they're done. You know, so we're going to want to kind of get all different sides. See how quickly they want to turn brown on you. So we want to get it down to a nice medium high or medium heat, a medium type thing, quickly as possible. And we'll just keep, we'll let them sit, we'll let them burn, we'll let them cook, and we'll spin them around here and there, and once we get through 4 or 5 pans of these, we'll have, like I said, it is tempting to go, oh, look at, we got all this extra room in here, but this makes it hard to deal with the, you know, the flipping of them, turning of them, management of them. Plus, you know, your burner's only so big under there, so no need to get greedy. The meatball is worth the wait. So as this happens, the garlic will get fried up in here. And again, we're going to preserve this oil. And because there's so many to fry, when Grandpa used to do this, he'd, you know, maybe have 30 meatballs or something like that, but I got like 80. So I'll actually preserve this kind of separately each time and put new oil and garlic in there to, and even add some additional garlic in there to get the final mix that we'll use to when we incorporate some of the sauce into the oil. And that's always fun, and it makes a big giant mess, but it is one of the 3 or 4 secret kind of ingredients that we throw out here. Sometimes it's easiest to get underneath them with a fork and just kind of spin them around, get them on their sides, you know, try not to, you know, get them all on one side here and there. You know how meatballs are cooked, but people always tell me I should do it in the oven, or I know a lot of people do their meatballs in the oven, but and then they make them really large, or just in the oven, which they're good in the oven, don't get me wrong, but not this. The oil and the whole process of the oil and the frying here is actually part of the sauce recipe. It's not just about the meatball. So keep that in mind. If you're ever tempted to, it sure as hell would be easier to cook 80 meatballs in the oven than it is to mess around with them on the griddle, but that's what it is. So we're gonna fry these up, and then we'll come back and we'll show you the big mess that happens here. Okay, there's your meatballs, fork through right into the sauce. This is the last batch of the 80 meatballs. Sauce is still cooking away there. Now we get to add the last ingredient. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pour off leave it to the side for a second. We'll incorporate these guys into the mix. Oh yeah. Get them cooking some more. That flavor in there. Now I saved the rest of this, the previous stuff, and some of the garlic and oil from before. There's only some residue left there. Now, and here is the part that is incredibly messy. So, we do have a splatter shield. We'll try and do our best with it. But to get in here, we still got the burner on, so that's still going, but I'll turn it down to low. Just get that oil back up to hot. And you want all that goodness in there. You want the old garlic, you want the old stuff. And then we're gonna put sauce directly in here. Maybe, oops, got a meatball. Get out of there. Another meatball. Come on. Maybe 4 or 5 cups. With that in there. Okay. And now I'm gonna incorporate that, cook it up. See, it's making a mess. You can use a spatula or other stuff to get that in there. We're gonna get all that greasy goodness going there. Cook that a little bit. Now, of course, we're not going to put all this oil into the sauce itself, nor are we going to put the burnt garlic in there, but we're going to let that cook up a little. Let's let that go, cook. And in the meantime, we'll get our strainer out. And we'll get a big bowl. Or a bowl of some sort that's cooking in there. Yeah, makes a mess. And we'll get ourselves a bowl. I'll put it over here. And the first thing we'll do is we'll get some of this grease off. So we'll get a big spoon and try and move some of the grease over to the corner. Just get the most of it. I mean, obviously there's going to be oil in there. It's olive oil, who cares, right? And we'll just dump some of that away. Ah, yeah, it's cooking up good. And like I said, these old garlic nibs we don't need either. Grab some of that oil. Alright, we'll turn the burner off. And now we'll kind of let it separate a little bit. Now we got most of the, we got a good amount of oil out of there. The oil's good though, doesn't matter. And the key thing is, we'll transfer this into here, which will just get rid of all that old garlic stuff and any meat, you know, pieces and stuff like that. But it will take the oil in, so that's why we take a little of the oil out of there. Carefully. And get it over here, get it in our strainer. I should have got the you don't want to do what I just did, which is take the strainer that is a little too fine. It'll just take a while to get through there. Should get a slightly thicker strainer. I forgot how fine those strainers were. That strainer was. But we can transfer it into a different strainer. We'll just have to be cautious here. wasn't paying attention. This is a really fine strainer. This should get us into the bowl here. Again, we just don't want that residue in there, right? Just don't want the garlic residue and any meat chunks or any of that kind of stuff. That's going through. Strainer's a little big. Sorry, I grabbed off the sides. Get it through. You don't want to waste any of this, really. Push it through. So all the sauce is in there. But this, if you think about it, this is going to provide a lot of garlic flavor, obviously. A little oil and fat residue, really, from the meat. So it's going to provide a lot of savory, essence to the sauce. And there's enough oil and stuff in there. See, we're kind of getting down to the end here. We're only left with this actual garlic residue. And we'll just get rid of that. And just get whatever off the bottom of this. Okay. Told you it was a mess. Okay, you can see it's still kind of a little oil there. If we wanted to take all that oil off, we could. All right. But now this goes back into the main sauce. And that was Pop's secret number 2 or 3, the mint and meatballs. This incorporation, you can see, giant mess here. Pans and stove, and it's on the floor, and yeah, whatever. It's Christmas. All right, we get that in there. Start incorporating that. We're still in cooking mode here. We're getting close. Let's see how these potatoes are. We'll take them out soon. We'll cook it with this stuff in here maybe for another hour or so. We're at just FYI, we're at about the 24-hour mark of maybe 16 hours or so of actual cooking of the sauce. And then, we'll probably cook it for a couple more hours here, and then we'll shut it down for the day, and then we'll cook. We'll keep it or heat it back up tomorrow, because tomorrow is when we're serving it. So now the part that we won't film is all the mess that needs to be cleaned up from this this portion of the recipe. But it's a good opportunity to clean your kitchen afterwards. So next step is really just simmering. So we're kind of good for now. We'll probably have some extra steps on lasagna and eggplant parm, which of course will use some of the sauce that we have made here to make those dishes. And but pretty much that is the sauce recipe. We'll have one more quick segment to wrap up the sauce, and then we'll go from there.